Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to discuss how your rights are protected in Canada. In Canada, an individual's human rights are protected by the Constitution as well as federal, provincial, and territorial laws. Canada's human rights laws are often reflect international human rights instruments such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In 1948, the international community came together to make sure that human rights laws were written and understood. When it was complete, the declaration provided a list of 30 articles outlining everyone's universal human rights. Now, human rights in Canada. The Canadian Bill of Rights, passed in 1960, was the first federal law that specifically set out fundamental rights for Canadians. It applies to laws and policies of the federal government and guaranteed rights and the freedoms similar to those found in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It applies to laws and policies of federal government and guarantees rights and freedoms similar to those found in Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That is equality rights, legal rights, and freedom of religion, speech, and association. However, the bill is not part of the Constitution of Canada. Private companies that are regulated by the federal governments like banks, trucking companies, broadcasters, and telecommunication companies. People can turn to the Canadian Human Rights Act to protect themselves against harassment or discrimination when based on one or more of the 11 grounds of discrimination, like race, age, and sexual orientation. For example, if a workplace policy offers benefits to some married couples but not others, this may be considered discrimination under the Canadian Human Rights Act. The Constitution of Canada. The Constitution of Canada includes the Constitution Act 1867 and the Constitution Act 1982. It is supreme law of Canada and reaffirms Canada's dual legal system. The Constitution sets out the basic principles of democratic government in Canada when it defines the powers of the three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms was enacted in 1982 as part of Canadian Constitution. Section 15 of the Chartered Equality Rights came into effect 3 years after the rest of the Charter on 17 April 1985 to give governments time to bring their laws in line with this section. The Charter guarantees broad equality rights as well as fundamental freedoms, democracy rights, mobility rights, legal rights, and language rights. It applies to all government action, meaning to the provincial legislature and parliament, and to everything done under this authority. This means that government must take the Charter into account in developing all laws and policies. However, the Charter also recognizes that even in a democracy, rights and freedoms are not absolute. For instance, freedom of expression is guaranteed, but no one is free to yell, fire in a crowded theater or to spread hate propaganda. Therefore, federal or the provincial legislature can limit fundamental rights, but only if that government can show that a limit is reasonable, is prescribed by law, and can be justified in a free and democratic society. The interest of society must be balanced against the interest of individuals to see if limits on individual rights can be justified. Now, provincial and territorial human rights laws. All provinces and territories have human rights laws to protect people from discrimination in employment, housing, and in providing goods, services, and facilities to the public, such as when dealing with restaurants, stores, schools, housing, and most workplaces. These laws apply to discrimination both by individuals in the private sector and by provincial and territorial governments. Some provincial and territorial laws protect a broader range of rights and freedoms. The protection provided by these laws is limited, like any legislation. The Canadian Bill of Rights, the Canadian Human Rights Act, and provincial and territorial human rights laws can be repealed or changed. It was only with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that human rights in Canada were protected in the Constitution. Now, the federal organizations that protect human rights. The Canadian Human Rights Commission promotes equal opportunities and works to prevent discrimination in Canada by doing research and developing policies to understand human rights, doing research and developing policies to understand human rights, managing efficiently cases and complaints, and representing the public interest to advance human rights for all Canadians. The tribunal acts like a court. It holds hearing and makes decisions on cases that it receives from the Commission. Only the tribunal has the authority to order a remedy or award damages. Provincial and territorial organizations that protect human rights. The Canadian Human Rights Commission protects those who have a human rights complaint with an employer or service provider regulated by the federal government. Service providers like retail, stores, restaurants, hotels, construction, insurance, healthcare, education, and the oil and gas industry are subject to provincial and territorial human rights legislation. Such established human rights bodies. Now, the foreign policy. On the international level, human rights are protected through the Charter of United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Charter of the United Nations was signed in 1945 and is the foundation of the entire United Nations organization. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was created in 1948 and sets out fundamental human rights that protect everyone in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Please do forward your comments on our discussion carried out today. Thank you very much, please. Thank you very much. Thank you.
SNS Education and Skills. We broaden your vision. We broaden your knowledge. SNS Education and Skills, जहां मिले आपको तालीम का एक नया आगाज, तालीम भी तरबियत भी. Affiliated with Canada and United States of America. English, Mathematics, Physics, Chemistry, Biology. Well qualified teachers. Language courses. IELTS, TOEFL, PET, Chinese language, Office Management course, Law Management course, Web Development, Digital Marketing, SEO, Search Engine Optimization. SNS Education and Skills. House number 29A, Street number 3, Pipeline Street, Caltex Road, Rawalpindi, Pakistan. Second branch opposite Wakil Colony, 208 RB Link Road, Lower Canal Road, Faisalabad, Pakistan. Phone 051 5157 518 0333 64 266 40. sseducationcollege.com.